Good evening and welcome to the Arundel Camera Club live stream for Wednesday, February 24th, 2001. My name is John Milliker and I'm the club president for the 2020-2021 season. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957. It exists to promote the art, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. Normally we meet at 7 p.m. every Wednesday evening during the school year in Severna Park, Maryland. However, with the current disruptions, we've decided to continue business as normal in a virtual space, which allows us to protect our members and guests from the current COVID-19 situation. For more information about us, please visit www.arundelcameraclub.org. And now let's turn it over to Christine for the upcoming schedule. Hello, Christine.
Hello, welcome. Today was our deadline for our February photo assignment, translucent or transparent. If you did not receive a confirmation from me, I did not receive your images. If you did receive them, then I have them and we're good. If you would like to add photos for the discussion next week but didn't get them in on time, then please submit them to me and they will be added to the discussion but will not be added to our Facebook page for voting. On next week, we have
Hold on a second, Christine. I did want to let everybody know that we've been having a little bit of problems with our email lists going to Gmail accounts. So if you do not, as Christine said, if you did not get a notification that she received your images, you should have her personal email somewhere in your list. And if not, reach out to either her or I on Facebook, and we'll make sure we get them in there for you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I'll try to add them if you get them to me in the next evening or so to our Facebook page for the voting. Next week, we have our discussion on our photo assignment, translucent or transparent. And then on Wednesday, March 10th at 7 p.m. is our program by Connie Imboden, 34 Years of Nudes, Water, and Mirrors. And then once again, on March 11th, which is a Thursday night from 4 to 9 p.m., we have a fundraiser at Brian Buru's restaurant. We posted the menu to the Facebook page. If you check the comments, I added the menu there tonight. And for $25, you get a 3-course dinner. You can order ahead and pick it up, or you can eat at the restaurant. Join us and support our club. $10 of each $25 meal will be donated back to our club. And send out the menu to your family and friends so that we can publicize our fundraiser. On March 17th is our digital contest, theme of open. On March 24th is a program by Lynn Garwood, composition Beyond the Rule of Thirds. And then tonight we have David Luria joining us for his program on Washington, D.C., A Photographer's Paradise. Mr. Luria is best known in the D.C. area as founder and director of the popular Washington Photo Safari, a program that takes people around key sites of the nation's capital and teaches them how and where to take great photos. Mr. Luria began the program in 1999. He also helped photographers in 20 other cities set up similar safari programs. Mr. Luria has served as an event photographer for the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum and as an official photographer for the National Cherry Blossom Festival and the Gray Line. His images of the nation's capital have appeared on the cover of 31 magazines and in over 100 publications, including Time, Prevention, Washingtonian, and Italian Cooking and Dining, and on postcards and guidebooks sold throughout the area. He has photographed over 300 hotels and restaurants for various publications and 2,500 apartment complexes. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Luria.
I'm delighted, Christine. Thank you. Good. Would you like me to begin?
Yes, let's get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you, John, also. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to join you this evening. I'm David Luria, and like John, I had a respectable job for many years, and then about 25 years ago, it got eliminated, but due to budget cuts, so I became a photographer instead. So I've been doing photography as a profession for about 25 years. But I'm a real fan of camera clubs. I think they perform a really valuable function by getting amateur photographers like you guys together with your peers, people who are sort of like you. They've got busy lives and families and careers, but you have all found time to devote to photography and associate with other people like you who enjoy taking pictures and learn from each other. So I would like to just say to, especially anybody who's new to the Anne Arundel Camera Club, that you joined a really good club that's got its act together. It really is a great way for you to improve your own photography skills and to learn new ones. Tonight, what I want to do is to show you some pictures of the nation's capital that your taxes have paid for. This is the city that is the capital of the country, and it's your taxes and mine that have paid for most of the things we're going to see tonight. Because we have such a stake in it financially, I think it's just great. It's a beautiful city. Some of the things that go on in the city are not so great, but the city itself, in terms of photogenic beauty, has a lot to offer. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with it, and the pictures tonight will show you places that you do know, and then many places perhaps that you did not know of. So my purpose really is not so much to show you my pictures, but to encourage you, when you have time and the ability, to come down and get around town yourself and see what kinds of things you can photograph here in Washington, D.C. We could start with the first slide.
Okay, you're up.
You're up. Okay, great. You can see this is the overview. This is the DC skyline. It's not New York City. We have a very limited skyline, but it's quite pretty. This is a picture of what we call the Big Three, which is the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and the Capitol, which all line up very neatly on a east to west axis. And this picture was taken from a very exclusive place that's not easy to get to, but if you have enough money, you can get there. It's called the Top of the Town Condo. It's a condo building in back of the Marine Corps Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. And if you have $250, they'll let you up there to take a picture, just to go take one picture. Or if you can go as a club and rent the thing for a couple of hours, that would be a good way to go. We do that from time to time. It's not cheap, but it's the best view of Washington anyplace. So that is sort of a nice overview of the city itself. And here is the next shot, which is kind of what we call the signature photo of Washington Photo Safari. I use that in a lot of my promotional materials. I used it because I took it with a $40 point and shoot film camera about 25 years ago. I use it to make the point that it's not the camera, it's the photographer that takes the pictures. You can take good or bad pictures with any camera. And as you've probably heard the analogy of people saying, "Oh, Christine, what a wonderful dinner you cooked. What kind of oven did you use?" So it's not the oven, it's the cook. And it's not the camera, it's the photographer. It's all about lining up good composition. This is in that spot right in between the Botanic Gardens and the Capitol down there on the National Mall. These azaleas are not there anymore, but still quite a pretty picture in the springtime. Next shot is one type of photography that you can do in Washington that you might not associate with a city like this is abstract photography, where you can get in tight on, there's a lot of mural art in this town, especially along 18th Street and in the Adams Morgan area, which is our sort of little Greenwich Village area, and also along U Street in the Shaw neighborhood. And that's the Shaw neighborhood is where Duke Ellington was born and raised. So there's a lot of very interesting artwork on the walls, and you can get there like that and take pictures like that. Pictures of I imagine you have had sessions on abstract photography. Washington, D.C. is a good place to do that. This is another shot from the Adams Morgan area. It just happens to be the front panel of a motor scooter leaning against a wall painting in Adams Morgan. So anything you can do, abstract is sort of fun because it gives you images that other people might not see and that you've discovered just by zeroing in on something that's small and colorful. This memorial is not too well known. It's called the African American Civil War Memorial. It is sort of the Vietnam memorial of the African American participation in the Civil War. It honors the 280,000 African-American soldiers who died fighting in the Union cause in the Civil War. And this is one of the statues, one of the pieces in the statue of a particular soldier, and the rest of it is a very moving memorial. It's on 12th and U Streets Northwest in Washington, D.C. This is the Arlington Memorial Bridge. This bridge was designed to mimic the arches of Pont Neuf in Paris. Pont Neuf meaning new bridge. It was new because it was built in the 9th century rather than the 4th century. And so the arches of Pont Neuf were mimicked by the Arlington Memorial Bridge, which was built in the 1930s. A view like this you can get in the morning hour from the top of the Washington Monument, which is presently closed to the public, but I would imagine will be opening soon again, we hope by the summertime. And going up the Washington Monument, you think that's something that all the tourists do, and why should I do it? You should do it because the views are great. You go up early in the morning or in the late afternoon for the late afternoon sun. It's a just beautiful place. You have 4 different windows looking east, west, north, and south. You can see for 50 miles in each direction. And the early morning light or the late afternoon light is always the best time to go. By the way, don't hesitate. If questions come up, don't hesitate, and Christine will pass them along to me. This is the hand of a statue known as the Awakening. It used to be in Haynes Point, but now they've moved it out to National Harbor, which is near Oxon Hill in Maryland. It's a 52, statue, if you were to stand up, would be 52 feet tall, a huge statue, and kids love to climb on him. A whole child can sit in the mouth of the giant who's lying down and waking up in the morning. That's why it's called the Awakening. And here he is out at National Harbor. And you can go out there and photograph him any time of day. There's no charge for that. Down near the Capitol is a fountain you may be familiar with. It's called the Bartholdi Fountain, named after Auguste Bartholdi, who is also the sculptor of the Statue of Liberty. And he sculpted this beautiful fountain down next to the Botanic Gardens, which you can see over on the left, and just a few blocks away from the Capitol that you can see in the background there. As you might have guessed, I did use a polarizing filter to bring out those sky clouds like that, and a wide angle lens at about f/16 to get the depth of field with the plant in the foreground and the Capitol in the background. There's a whole garden surrounding the fountain, and it's a lovely place to spend an hour or two taking pictures. And incidentally, then go into the Botanic Gardens, which is a beautiful greenhouse that shows all kinds of examples of American plants and flowers. One of the great sites in Washington is Washington National Cathedral. It happens to be the 6th largest cathedral in the world. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's really quite a spectacular place. It is on Wisconsin Avenue, Upper Wisconsin Avenue. And while it's closed to the public now, I do anticipate they'll be opening perhaps in April or May. And we hope that we'll be able to take our groups back in there again. It's just a wonderful place to photograph inside and out. And the nice thing is, unlike many other churches, they do allow you to bring tripods in, as long as you're quiet, as long as you don't make a lot of noise assembling or unassembling your tripod, and you stay out of the center nave and just work along the sides. You're welcome to go in there and take pictures. It's absolutely beautiful place. Next to the cathedral is this garden called the Bishop's Garden. And you can sit there and read a book and contemplate and play with your kids or a dog. And you can take pictures like this one, which was done with a 12 millimeter lens at about f/16 in order to get the rose sharp and the cathedral sharp as well. Here is sort of an ordinary shot of the Lincoln Memorial. And I just use this as an example of things that you can do. If you come to Washington, be sure to bring your tripod. And a neutral density filter so that you can take this shot without the filter and then put a filter on. This is done at about 400th of a second But then the next one was done at 5 seconds with the neutral density filter, so that most of the moving people are gone. Here you are before, and here's after. So that's what a fun thing to do with a neutral density filter is get rid of all the moving people. Anybody standing still is going to show up, but the moving people are generally gone. This was done with a 5-second exposure, I think. When you see postcards of other cities and fountains and buildings and plazas and there's nobody in them, that's how they did it, with a neutral density filter and a long exposure. Another fun thing to do here in DC is certainly, as I imagine most of you have seen the Vietnam Memorial and been moved by it. And one thing you can do is, this is done with a multiple exposure trick, where I photographed one of the statues in the 3 servicemen statue. Those are the 3 soldiers who are facing the wall and seeing their names on the wall. That's what that 3 servicemen statue is all about. They look over at the wall and they see their names on the wall and they look shocked. This is a statue of an African-American soldier. He's accompanied by a Hispanic American and a Caucasian soldier. But this one I did the African American's face and neck in a multiple exposure. I took one picture of the soldier and then I ran over to the wall and took a picture of the wall. And the 2 of them came out in the same frame. We used to call that double exposure in film days, and now it's called multiple exposure. You can do 2, 3, 4 exposures all in the same frame if your camera is equipped with that. Most of the newer cameras are. This is also a multiple exposure trick. Here are the big 3 again. This is done from the Netherlands Carillon, that beautiful bell tower that was given to us in the 1940s by the Netherlands in gratitude for our having helped liberate the Netherlands. The Carillon is under construction now, but the hill next to it is where you get this lovely shot with the 3 monuments all lined up. So usually once a month we do a full moonrise safari, full moonrise over Washington, to get the moon with the monuments. Now, unfortunately, the moon doesn't usually come up right there where you'd like it to be. It usually comes up way over to the left or way over to the right, far away from the monuments. So with the multiple exposure trick that your cameras do, you can take one picture of the moon and another picture of the monuments and put them together in the same frame. Now, I know you can do that in Photoshop, but it's sort of fun to do it in the camera itself, so that the moon just pops up right where you want it to be. 2 totally different exposures. The moon is done at about 800th of a second and the monument's done at 1/4 of a second. So moon pictures are very often overexposed because people don't realize the moon is very bright, lit by the same sun that lights up the earth in the daytime. So this is a fun thing to do, another fun thing to do in DC with your camera. From the top of the Washington Monument, you want to time your visit there again, either late afternoon sun. This would be in the summertime. I think this was done in August, in the summertime, so that the monument is very often open until 9 p.m., so that you get that lovely golden hour dusk look from the top of the Washington Monument. And with a nice long 70 to 200 millimeter lens, you can compress the distance between the Capitol and the Supreme Court in back of it on the left and the Library of Congress on the right, and RFK Stadium in the far distant background.
Quick question about the previous photo for you. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Kathy is asking where the shot of the moon over the big 3 was taken. I think she missed that it was a double exposure.
This particular night, the moon was way out of the picture, way over to the left, way far away from the monuments. So I had to take a separate shot of the moon itself, placing it in the picture without the monuments in the picture, placing it sort of on the left, left of center, like where it is right now, in a dark sky, and then move my camera over to the monuments and take another picture of the monuments, leaving room for the moon. And took a second picture, and then the 2 pictures came out together using the multiple exposure option of your camera. Not every cameras have that, but most of the higher end cameras do. Canon, Nikon, Sony's, most of them do have the multiple exposure option.
And where were you when you took the monument picture?
This was from the Netherlands Carillon Bell Tower in Arlington, Virginia. It's right next to the Marine Corps Memorial, the Iwo Jima statue.
Okay,
And
thank you.
There's free parking in the parking lot there. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Here we go. The Capitol in the wintertime is always very pretty. And of course, everything's very white, white, white. And I just think it's always nice to break up the whiteness of something with red. Red is the color that draws the eye. You probably, most of you are aware of this, that red makes you look. That's why stop signs are red and stop lights are red. It's an animal reaction. We can't help ourselves. When we look at things, we stop when we see red. And so if you can get red in your picture, it often makes pictures more interesting. So that's what I did here.
Another quick question about double exposures. Does it matter which photo you take first on multiple exposures?
No, that's a good question, Christine. And the answer is no, it does not matter. But what you have to do is to remember, you have to take test shots. And you have to remember what's the correct exposure for my moon picture. In this case, it was about 500 or 800th of a second at f11, because the moon's very bright. And then I move over to the monuments, and I have to remember what is the correct exposure for the monument, which in that case I think was like a quarter of a second. So you have to make all those adjustments in between the two photos. And then what you have are basically two separate pictures that are combined together in the camera.
Okay, thank you.
There's a new place in Washington, well, new, maybe about 2 years now. It's called Central Place Tower. It's a office building, apartment, condo office building in Rosslyn, Virginia. And it gives you the same view of Washington that you get if you have flown into National Airport coming from the north as you come banking along the Potomac and you look out to your left, that's what you see. Except when you look out of your airplane window, you only have about 10 seconds to see the view and then it's gone. At this place, you can look out of the window and take all the time you want to take a picture. They used to be open to the public, but now they've closed and they're just available for parties and events. It's 35 stories high, so it has really a beautiful view of the city. But if you know somebody who lives in Arlington residents can bring 3 guests free of charge up with them. That was part of the deal when they built the building. Arlington County made them agree to let Arlington residents go up free of charge. And so if you have friends in Arlington, each Arlington resident can bring 3 guests along and you can go up there and take pictures. They don't like tripods, unfortunately. So you can do your high ISO and handhold the cameras. You're shooting through glass. When shooting through glass, there's something called a lens skirt, which is a very handy little device. You can get that at B&H Photo Video, $58. But it's like a little hoop skirt that fits around your lens and attaches with suction cups to the window and blocks out any interior light. It's called a lens skirt, and it's great for shooting through windows, through glass when there's backlighting. Here's another view there at the Central Place Tower. It's got 2 levels, an observation deck on top and another level below. Well, of course, the most famous part of photography in Washington is the cherry blossoms. And this is a sort of typical scene against one of the original trees. As you probably know, the trees were given to us in 1912 by the city of Tokyo as a gift to Washington. That was done thanks to the efforts of a woman named Eliza Skidmore, who saw cherry trees in Japan, thought they were so pretty, and lobbied the Park Service for 15 years. She wrote letters to the Park Service urging the Park Service to plant cherry trees in Washington like they have in Japan. And finally, through a contact that she had with President Taft and his wife, The President Taft spoke to the Japanese ambassador. The Japanese ambassador spoke to the mayor of Tokyo, and the mayor of Tokyo sent us 3,000 trees. And a few of them are still left. This is one of them, one of the older trees that's still there. And the whole scene is just beautiful. Now, last year it was closed off due to COVID because they didn't want big crowds walking around the tidal basin. I'm afraid the same thing may be true this year. They haven't made a decision yet, but it could very well not be open this year. It's usually late March. It's like 20th of March to the 5th or 6th of April, 2 or 3 week period when these blossoms are in full bloom. It's just a spectacular show. And again, you say, oh, well, it's so crowded. Yes, it is, but who cares? You can shoot away from the people and don't have and do the trees and not worry about all the people. It's the kind of thing you get these lovely overarching branches that arch over the sidewalk into the tidal basin. When they're in full bloom, it's really the most spectacular look. And so people are enjoying it all the time. And yes, there are hundreds of people walking around there, but just you shouldn't let that bother you. There you go. That's a view from a bridge looking towards the Washington Monument. And here's my granddaughter, who is very happy about the cherry blossoms coming in. The best time to go there, frankly, is early morning. If we're allowed again to do it this year, we do cherry blossoms at sunrise photo safari, where we take people around with the sun behind us, shining on the blossoms across the tidal basin. It's about 1.25 mile walk around the whole tidal basin, and it's just beautiful. It smells good. It looks good. It's really a wonderful, wonderful thing to do in Washington. Jefferson Memorial with the paddle boats in the foreground. The paddle boats you can rent, I think, for $8 an hour or something, and paddle your way across the tidal basin to the Jefferson. You'd be surprised how far away it is. It doesn't look that far when you're on the water, but those of you who swim and sail and rowboat know that water is deceiving in distance, so it takes a lot of paddling to get over to the Jefferson Memorial and back. You got to have strong legs to navigate those things. Another place for cherry blossoms in Washington is Congressional Cemetery, which, as John and Christine know, is the burial place for Matthew Grady, the famous Civil War photographer. The cemetery, a lot of famous people are buried there, and they have beautiful cherry blossoms, the pink kind, and they bloom about about a week after the ones in the tidal basin. So if you miss the ones at the tidal basin, you can go a week later to Congressional Cemetery. At the moment, it is also closed to the public, but we hope it'll be open up by the spring. We hope, we just don't know. If not this year, then there's always next year. DC also has lots of street festivals, as do most major cities, and kids out there playing always make good photography. And they have contests with watermelon seed spitting and stuff like that. So there's lots of opportunities to photograph people having fun at street festivals. Here's a tight shot on the back of the 3 servicemen memorial, the 3 soldiers who are looking at the names on the wall in the distance. This was done, I think, with a 200 millimeter, that lovely 70-200 2.8 lens. Where you can really get some really nice blur in the background. And this shows the one soldier, he happens to be characterized as a Hispanic American soldier, having his hand on the back of the officer, second lieutenant, Caucasian officer there. And he is probably saying, hey, boss, what the hell is that over there? And they're looking at the wall, and we see their names on the wall. So it's quite a moving moment. A moment in time that stopped in time that makes this statue so interesting. Here's a place you probably didn't know of. It's called the Diyanet Mosque. It is a Turkish mosque in Lanham, Maryland. You're driving along the road in Lanham, you're passing strip malls and just regular American sort of scenery, and suddenly there's this huge, gorgeous mosque that appears on the highway, and there it is. Look at that. It looks like you're in another country all of a sudden. It's called the Diyanet Mosque, Diyanet, fashioned after mosques in Turkey. And they do allow photographers, maybe not now, but again, when it opens up, photographers to do the outside and the inside, to take off your shoes, and you can do the inside as well. This was inside of one of the mosque temples. Just a lovely place to go and take pictures in the evening as well. Dunbarton Oaks in Georgetown, a famous location with lovely gardens, and also a museum of prehistoric Columbian artifacts and very artwork that's in Georgetown on R Street. The Key Bridge in Georgetown, named after Francis Scott Key, in the early morning sun. Again, like in any city in the world, the best time to go is in that golden hour just after the sun comes up, that 1 hour after the sun comes up, or the hour before the sun comes down. That's the best time to take pictures any place, anytime, not in the middle of the day. This is called the Old Executive Office Building. It is right next to the White House. It was built in the 1880s in what's called French Second Empire architecture. This is the type of architecture you see all over Paris. It used to be the War Department in World War I. It was the State Department after that. And now the State Department has its own building. And so this is now called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. It houses the Office of the Vice President, the Secret Service, the Office of Management and Budget, and several other federal agencies, linked with an underground tunnel to the White House, which is over on its right. Old Executive Office Building. They used to allow tours in there, but unfortunately not anymore due to security. But the building itself is very pretty. From the south side, you get a much better picture because you get direct sun on it. The first Saturday in April, all over the world, here's a little known fact, is International Pillow Fight Day in every major city of the world, in Paris and London and Moscow and Pittsburgh and San Francisco and Washington, D.C., the first Saturday of every April each year for the last 15 years is called Monumental Pillow Fight Day. And so people go out and they swat each other with pillows, not feather-filled, but down-filled pillows, so they don't have feathers going all over them all. But it's a great place to go and take pictures. We also do snowball fights when it snows. Only in Washington, D.C. would you have an organization with its own acronym called the WASFA, the Washington Area Snowball Fight Association, which has its own Facebook page. And as soon as it snows, we don't get that much snow in this town, but they get very excited when we get 2 or 3 inches of snow. And they put a link on the Facebook page. It's snowing. Meet us at DuPont Circle at 12 o'clock, and half of us will defend the fountain and half of us will attack the fountain. So you go there with your camera and bundled up carefully because you're going to get hit with snowballs. And you shoot at 500, 800,000 of a second and get some nice action shots. And here's some more of the pillow fight. They're just people having a wonderful time, taking out all their aggressions on each other, and nobody gets hurt. So people come dressed up in, here's another snowball fight shot. People come dressed up in armor. Look at that. This guy's dressed up. One guy's got pillows attached to him to protect himself. And this fellow's got armor from the Middle Ages to protect himself. Great action shots. So they're doing your continuous shooting, boom, 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 at, thousandths of a second, 2,000ths of a second to get all that action. Pillow Fight Day. Of course, the fireworks each year, each July 4th, always makes for good photography opportunities. There are many different places from which you can do the fireworks in DC. Probably the best one is at the Netherlands Carillon, where I did that picture of the 3 monuments. There's a big hillside there. You'll find a few thousand other photographers with the same idea, maybe a few hundred, on the same hillside, but there's plenty of space for everybody to get lovely shots. This one was done from the tidal basin, shooting towards the Washington Monument. And anytime you have a body of water, that always makes your fireworks pictures more interesting because they can reflect the glow of the fireworks. That's done from the Iwo Jima Memorial, the famous Marine Corps Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. There's a hill in back there, and with a nice telephoto lens to smush everything together like this, you can get a shot like that during the fireworks display. Get there early because lots of other people like the same vantage point. Each July, the Smithsonian Institution puts on a festival called the Folklife Festival, and they have different exhibits from different countries and contests and things that are going on. And so they'll have, trapeze artists and things like this. That's on the National Mall, usually in July, during the month of July, with ethnic exhibits. This is a Bolivian face mask. They'll have people from different countries demonstrating how they do pottery and other things that they do. It's, again, another great place to take pictures, colorful pictures. As in any city, you can do lovely nighttime street photography with your tripod and slow shutter speeds. And by the way, if the question of tripods comes up, generally you may use a tripod. You can use a tripod pretty much all over the city, on the streets and along the National Mall. The one place where they don't like you to use one is near the Capitol. Capitol Police are quite strict about tripods, and you can get a permit to use a tripod near and around the Capitol from the Capitol Police. You apply for a permit for August 3rd from 7 to 9 p.m. or something like that. So you can get a permit to do that, but without a permit, a cop will come up to you and ask you to put the tripod away. That's not true in the rest of the city. And you can generally use tripods around most of the monuments. They're not, if you ask the question about are tripods allowed in the Lincoln Memorial, the answer is no, but they don't always enforce that. So it's sort of the luck of the draw, who's on duty that night. I've never really had much trouble. They are a little bit afraid of tripods. They're afraid that people might trip over them. That's one of the reasons why they don't allow tripods in some of the monuments. They're afraid of people tripping over them. They're not allowed in any museum, any place in the world, actually. Tripods or selfie sticks are not allowed in any museum. This is a 3-second long exposure with a bus going by. And of course, when you do a nice long exposure, you don't get the body of the car or the bus, but you do get the lights streaking by, and that makes a nice picture. Another lesser known place in DC, in Northeast DC at 14th and Quincy, Northeast, not Northwest, but 14th and Quincy Northeast, which is in the sort of original Catholic German-Irish, where German-Irish settlers settled back there in the 19th century, is the Franciscan Monastery. Absolutely gorgeous place. It's been there for 130 years. Many people don't know about it. It is a working monastery of Franciscan friars. And that is the church itself, shot through one of the arches that surrounds the courtyard of the monastery. And within the archway corridors are examples of the Hail Mary Rosary in 150 different languages. And so if you like to study Old English or Old German or Sanskrit or Hawaiian or Rajasthani or any other language, you'll see the Hail Mary written on signs all along that corridor. It's a very interesting place to go. And this is the home of Frederick Douglass, the famous freedom fighter who back in the early part of the 19th century, he had a home in Northeast DC, and this is his home on a hill. He was one hell of a guy. He was the early Rosa Parks who refused to get off a train, and when they tried to get him off the train, he took the seat with him because he said, "I paid for the seat. and I'm very happy here, so please let me stay. And they didn't let him stay, and they dragged him off. And he wrapped his feet around the stanchion of the seat and took it with him as they left the train. The Octagon was the home of Dolly Madison back in the 19th century, and it is an 8-sided building, very lovely home. It's open to tours, and this is where we practice ghost photography. You can see that we have captured a ghost trying to break into the Octagon here. Ghost photography is lots of fun. You can do that all over town. They do ghost tours of Washington, but you never really see a ghost on the ghost tours unless you come with us, and we show you how to take pictures of ghosts, like this one in cemetery in Georgetown. There's an actual ghost. There he is. And the way you do that, of course, is with your tripod, a 4-second long exposure, and you say ready, set, go. And when you say go, you hit the shutter, and your ghost counts out 1,001, 1,002, and then moves out of the picture. And by moving out 2 seconds in a 4-second exposure, he leaves a ghost of himself in the picture, and you see right through him, and you get pictures like that. And there's me as a ghost. See, I'm actually dead, and here this is what I look like, and I come back and haunt people now. So that's what you can do with a 4-second exposure at Lafayette Park. That is the hand of one of the soldiers in the 3 servicemen statue down near the Vietnam Memorial. Very nicely sculpted. I just like the detail there, and so I did a close-up, I think, again with that nice 70 to 200 millimeter lens. Another shot with that same lens. These are the hands of the 6 soldiers gripping the flag and thrusting that flagpole into the ground at the Iwo Jima Marine Corps Memorial. A very powerful statue based on what became the most famous photograph of World War II, which was the planting the flag at Mount Suribachi. And here are the hands reaching for the flag to plant it into the rocks there. I'd like to say that this is my dining room, but it isn't. This is a spectacular museum in Northwest Washington called Hillwood Museum and Gardens. This was the home of Marjorie Meriwether Post. She was the daughter of the man who founded Post Cereals, so she had a lot of money, and she married a man who was the ambassador to what was Russia before it was the Soviet Union. And they lived there in Russia and were there at the time of the Russian Revolution in 1917. And because of the revolution, and the Bolsheviks were kicking out all the white Russians, and the white Russians were leaving and taking and selling off their china and their Fabergé eggs and their beautiful little statues, selling them off at very low prices in order to get out of town. And she scarfed up a lot of that. And so it's all here in the Hillwood Museum in upper Northwest DC. I think they charge you $12 to visit the place. It's absolutely beautiful, just spectacular. And the gardens themselves are really lovely. That's a sunrise shot of the Marine Corps Memorial, with the sun coming up in between the hands of the statue there. Taken as the sun, of course, is in the east, and this I'm facing from west to east to get this shot. The reason this statue, by the way, is these soldiers are 36 feet tall. The statue itself is 72 feet tall with a flagpole. These soldiers are so big that the canteen on their hips will hold 8 gallons of water. That gives you an idea of the size of the statue. When a real Marine comes up to change the flag, he climbs up a ladder and he comes up to the kneecap. His head comes up to the kneecap of this soldier here. That's how tall these guys are, 36 feet tall. It's a beautiful statue, beautifully composed photograph done by Joe Rosenthal back there in 1945, won them a Pulitzer Prize. Just a lovely composition that shows all the dedication and energy being put into planting that flag. Here it is, another shot at sunrise. And here at night, it makes a very nice picture at night as well. At night, frankly, you can see the detail in the faces of each of these soldiers, and it makes the pictures even more interesting. There was a whole movie done by Clint Eastwood called Flags of Our Fathers. Perhaps some of you have seen that. And that was based on what happened to the 6 soldiers who planted the flag at Mount Suribachi. 3 of them died a few days later in combat, and 3 of them survived and came back to help raise war bond money by doing mock flag raisings all over the United States to raise war bond money for the war effort. This is a shot done in the middle of the afternoon, looking in the other direction at the Iwo Jima shot, and using, this is what we call creative white balance, using the wrong white balance setting. In the afternoon you use either your auto or your cloudy white balance in an afternoon shot. In this case, I used the wrong one, which is incandescent or tungsten. And if you use that, it gives a bluish cast to the sky and makes a very interesting, nice silhouette when you do that. So it's always good to follow the rules, and then it's good to break the rules. And breaking the rules means using the wrong white balance sometimes. In the wintertime, you get a shot like that. And a flash will put more little light on these snowflakes like that. This is the Japanese garden at the Hillwood Museum that I showed you earlier. Just a lovely rose gardens, and then a whole Japanese style garden at the Hillwood Museum. And you could spend an hour in there just walking around getting beautiful shots of the little fountains and little bridges in this Japanese style garden at Hillwood Museum and Gardens. It's up near the Van Ness UDC Metro stop on the Red Line in upper Northwest DC. That's, of course, the famous Jefferson Memorial. When you come and do the Jefferson from across the tidal basin, you want to keep walking along the pathway of the tidal basin across the water from the Jefferson, and keep walking until you can see the statue. And there's a statue staring at you, so that you get that nice view of the whole monument and the Jefferson statue looking at you. When you get to that spot, you will find that there is a cut in the trees. In other words, about 6 or 7 trees have been removed from the spot where you are standing. And that was done at the request of President Roosevelt, who commissioned the construction of the Jefferson. He wanted the Jefferson statue to be able to have a direct look, a direct line of sight view into the White House. So if you turn around, you'll see right into the south portico of the White House. And that was done at Roosevelt's request, so that Jefferson could look in and see to make sure that who's ever in the White House is doing a good job. There he is again. It always makes a better shot when you can get the statue silhouetted in the picture. The Kennedy Center is always lovely. At different times of year, they put different lights on the Kennedy Center, and you can get this shot from Washington Harbor, which is that complex of hotels, restaurants, and condos in Georgetown called Washington Harbor. There's a pier there, and you get a nice angle shot on the Kennedy Center. And here's a Kennedy Center shot from that Central Place tower that I mentioned to you earlier, shooting down straight at the Kennedy Center complex. The Kennedy Center itself is very pretty. You can go in there, again, when it opens up, walk around the main hall, take pictures in there. Tripods are usually not allowed inside. And then go up to this upper tier here, this upper level. There's a whole balcony area. You can get lovely views of the city and of Roslyn from walking all around that whole upper balcony part. Lovely place to take pictures as well. When it snows, we don't get that much snow in town, but when it snows, I always organize what we call snow faris down at the Korean War Memorial to show people what it was like in Korea It was like 14 below zero in Korea in the wintertime. These poor guys really suffered terribly from the cold weather in Korea. And this really evokes the kind of weather that they fought in the Korean War. These are the 19 soldiers on patrol in Korea, the Korean War Veterans Memorial, it's called. And this is one of the soldiers at the Korean War Memorial at night. Again, using the incorrect white balance. At night, you should usually be using either auto or incandescent white balance. In this case, I used shade in order to make the sky red. So when you have a cloudy sky, and the cloudy sky reflects the light pollution of a city like Washington, gives it a bit of a reddish glow. And if you use the shade white balance or put a high Kelvin, like 9,000 Kelvin, then you get that lovely, whoops, sorry, I've done something bad here.
I believe you stopped sharing your screen.
Yeah.
David, your screen was okay. You just need to get back into your photo editor.
Yeah, let me see.
Oh, actually, I think you canceled your screen sharing session. Make sure you just go back through it again, and we'll get you back hooked up.
Okay.
Okay, I see your screen. Just bring up your photo viewer again, and as soon as I see that, I'll bring it up.
Okay. Excuse me. That's it?
Okay, here
Got
it comes.
it?
We have you back
You
up.
got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the Korean War Memorial with a shade white balance setting to make it look like a soldier in combat. One of the nice trees along the tidal basin, I call her the Lady of the Blossoms tree. Looks a little bit like Eleanor Roosevelt from the side. This is an 87-year-old tree that has her arms up in the air in back of her and her face pointed at the Washington Monument. And it looks a little bit like an elderly lady holding up cherry blossoms and pulling them at the Washington Monument. It's right in back of the FDR Memorial Bookstore. Here's another white balance trick at the Andrew Jackson statue in Lafayette Park. Again, on a cloudy night with the clouds reflecting that light pollution of the city with a bit of a reddish glow, which I enhanced by using the shade white balance setting and underexposing to make the statue nice and dark. And here's the Jackson statue in the wintertime. One of the most beautiful places in Washington, and if you haven't been there, you really should make it a point to go again when it opens up. It's the Library of Congress interior. It's absolutely gorgeous. The gold ceilings and the walls and everything. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to go and take pictures. Here's what it's called, the Great Hall. And this is a statue which is called, she's holding up the lamp of learning, and she is lighting your way to education. Here, follow this light, and you will find 65 million publications of every book and pamphlet and magazine that's ever been written, and most of them in languages other than English. It's the collections, of course, are huge, and this is where you go to if you're a researcher, you get access to publications in the Library of Congress. If you're a photographer, it's just a beautiful place to go and take pictures. Tripods are not allowed, but you can use these balustrades on the upper level balconies to hold your tripod, hold your camera. This is the Lincoln after rain. You get that nice, the water reflections on the sidewalk, the plaza in front of the Lincoln. It's a good time to go and take a picture of the Lincoln Memorial at night. A great place to go and do portraits, believe it or not, just informal, candid outdoor portraits, is the the wall at the Korean War Memorial. You go in the middle of the day on a sunny day, and you get that nice sort of side lighting coming in, like that on one side of the face, and the other, side of the face a little bit darker. It's a great place to go and do outdoor portraits. No flash needed, no studio needed. Just go and you get that nice black background.
Lawrence over on Facebook is asking what camera you use.
For this picture? What I use in general? I've gone through several different Nikons over the years, and at the moment, I think I was doing this with the Z6 mirrorless camera. But I've used the 300 and the 700 and the 750 and the 7500. So there are various Nikon cameras that I've had over the years, and I do a lot of shooting with some of the APS sensor. I'll do with the 18 to 400 Tamron lens, which is a very great, very useful all-purpose lens, 18 to 400, because it's wide and it's long. There's Marilyn Monroe. She is painted on the side of a building as you come over the Taft Bridge up Connecticut Avenue. As you come over that bridge and look up to your left, you'll see Marilyn Monroe. She's been there since the 1970s, and she gets a touch-up about every 5 or 10 years, and she dominates the view of Connecticut Avenue as you come along there. Quite spectacular. This takes place on Tuesdays, every Tuesday in the month of July and August, at the Marine Corps Memorial, right in front of the Marine Corps, that Iwo Jima statue. The Marines do a silent drill team, and they'll come and these are bayoneted rifles, M1 rifles, World War II era rifles. Each of them weighs 10 pounds. And with bayonets attached, these guys flip these rifles over and over and throw them at each other, and nobody gets hurt. It's quite an amazing show. And they do it every Tuesday at the Marine Corps Memorial. And we do a safari there. We take you there and we show you how to get these pictures with the rifles in midair. Look at that. And nobody gets hurt. I don't know how they do that, but they do. There you go. Look at that. So that's a lot of fun to do. And this is where you do your rapid shooting and your fast shutter speeds to catch the action. Tuesday nights, 6:30, July and August. We've got it all. We've got waterfalls, we've got parks, we've got Marines, we've got this is called Meridian Hill Park on 16th and T in Washington. 16th and T. It's a lovely park. You can go and sit there and read and take pictures. A lot of statues, including one of Dante and one of Joan of Arc. That statue right up there is Joan of Arc looking out over the city, a gift from the city, from Paris to Washington. At holiday time, the U.S. Botanic Gardens puts on a wonderful display of electric trains, model trains, running through different scenes in the United States, different national parks of the United States. And it's a great place to hang out with your kids. Another double exposure of the Jefferson Memorial with the moon, which wasn't there, but which I put there. Mount Vernon, you don't want to miss that. That is George Washington's home, of course. Mount Vernon in Alexandria, Virginia. And it's a very interesting place. I don't think they allow you to take pictures inside, but you can do lots of pictures outside of the home. And they have lots of different exhibits and things going on. They recreate Revolutionary War battles with exploding cannons, guns that they shoot at each other. And it makes for very good photography. What I love about this place is the fact that after George Washington died, his home fell into disrepair and nobody did anything about it. He is the founder of the country, and they let his home sort of deteriorate. And it wasn't until about 1848 that a bunch of women came along and formed a group called Mount Vernon Ladies. And they took charge of rehabilitating George Washington's home and putting it back together and making it look nice. And so there's a plaque here at Mount Vernon that has a wonderful inscription. It says, "If the men of America can't find the time to take care of the founder of their country's home, the women will take charge." So something like that. And sure enough, they have run the Mount Vernon estate for more than 100 years, and they keep it running beautifully.
Over in Facebook, Kathy asks, which park had the Joan of Arc statue?
Oh, it's called Meridian Hill Park. Meridian Hill Park. It's at 16th and T. That's where it starts. It takes up several city blocks. Meridian Hill Park. And here's Mount Vernon. They do a spectacular fireworks twice a year in June and in December. Fireworks display at Mount Vernon. In the area of Washington called Shaw, which is, let's say, from 8th Street to 16th Street on U Street, U Northwest. One of the most famous locations there is Ben's Chili Bowl, where you can go and die early, but die happy by eating chili-laced hamburgers and frankfurters. But also, there's wonderful mural art all along the walls and alleyways of the Shaw neighborhood. So that would be U. And this particular shot, I think, is at 12 U Street and 13th or 15th Street. And it's a depiction of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And here's some other shots along the walls at Shaw. And this is the famous National Building Museum. Again, that's what's so nice about this town is that it just has all these little like treasures for going and taking pictures. This is called the National Building Museum. It's at 4th and F Street, between 4th and 5th on F Street Northwest, right next to the Judiciary Square Metro. It takes up a whole city block. It was built in the 1880s, and it was at that time called the Pension Building. And it was built as sort of the VA of the time. It was built as the place to write out checks for the veterans of the Civil War. And the whole interior is a huge atrium indoors. And the atrium was filled with desks of clerks writing out checks to the Civil War veterans. And then later on, it became a museum that celebrates the building arts. It's called the National Building Museum. This was done with a shift lens, a perspective control lens, so that I keep my verticals nice and straight by using a shift lens. If you know, they're a little bit expensive, but they are really good for doing architectural work. This is at Reagan Washington National Airport, where the artwork is all built in, including this piece at the end of one of the upper level corridors. Again, using the wrong white balance, I used incandescent here to give it that bluish look. This airport is being totally rehabbed with another a $1 billion makeover, and a lot of the places that have been before security are now after security. So when you go there, it's going to be quite different if you haven't been there for a while. The control tower at Reagan National. That tower was the original control tower at the old National Airport. That control tower was lifted off of the original airport, which is now called Terminal A. They took the control tower and with one of those great big banana helicopters and flew it over to the new Terminal C at the new airport, which was built in 1997. That's the front of the National Building Museum. And there's the Judiciary Square Metro in the foreground. It's a lovely place to visit, really is spectacular. Here's a nice framed shot of the cathedral. As you can see, it's still under construction. They had an earthquake in 2011, which did $35 million damage to the cathedral. This kind of stonework is very hard. This was done, a lot of it, by Italian stone carvers back in the 1950s and 60s, and they're all dead now. So it's very hard to get that kind of work done, and very expensive to get that work done. They are rebuilding the steeples, that some of which fell off during the earthquake. Luckily, nobody was hurt, and there was no major damage to the roof, but the steeples were damaged. This is part of one of the gates at National Cathedral. The ironwork shows different stories from the Bible in the artwork, and this depicts Moses and the burning bush. And here, this was done again with using the wrong white balance, the incandescent or tungsten white balance, in order to give that nice blue sky look in silhouette, the statue in the foreground. We do photo safaris at the cathedral when they open up again, and we take insider views where we take people to parts of the cathedral where the public doesn't usually go. It's a very interesting place to photograph. This is National Harbor, the relatively new complex in Maryland. I believe this is the MGM Casino there. Done from a water taxi. You can take a water taxi from Alexandria across the river. It goes under the Woodrow Wilson Bridge and over to National Harbor, where you also see a Ferris wheel like that. And it makes very nice photography at the blue hour, like that. The blue hour being that period about 20, 30 minutes after sunset, when you get that sky is sort of not quite night yet. It's still the sky, the sun has gone below the horizon, and it's not lighting up the earth anymore, but still lighting up the sky, and it makes it dark enough so that the lights show up on the buildings and the monuments. In the National Portrait Gallery, which is a whole city block wide museum, are the portraits of all the presidents, and this is the one of Obama there at the National Portrait Gallery. Excuse me, all those portraits and the entire contents of that museum are open to photographers. No tripods, but you can go in there. Use your high ISO, hold the camera steady, watch your white balance, and you can come steal all the artwork out of the museum. At the National Zoo, when it opens up again, this is the king at the National Zoo, and he's just a beautiful cat. It poses for you like that. Nationals Park, our baseball stadium. And this is the kind of shot you get inside of National Cathedral in the early morning sun, usually during the winter hours. When the sun is low in the sky, it comes in from the east, which is over here on the left, and it shines through the stained glass windows, and it projects the light of the stained glass windows onto the walls of the cathedral. And you get this beautiful projected light like that. Down in the lower right corner is the tomb of Woodrow Wilson, the only president who is buried in Washington, D.C. If they ever ask you that on a trivia question, that's the answer. The only president buried in Washington is Woodrow Wilson. He was an elder of the church, and they buried him here. Kennedy is buried in Arlington Cemetery, which is not technically in Washington. This is the National Museum of the American Indian, one of the newer museums on the National Mall, at dawn, with that nice early morning light and the reflection in the pond in front. This building was designed by Native American architect using principles of Native American architecture, which means no sharp corners. For example, tents. The tents, the housing that the Native Americans often used was all round. There are no corners, and people would sit around in a circle and discuss things. And so the sharp corners mean, that somebody's in charge. Usually, what they have here is rounded corners, so that there's a sort of more democratic way of discussing things, and that's why they prefer rounded edges instead of straight edges. This is in the National Portrait Gallery, American Art Museum. It's a complex of the two museums are combined together. One of the scenes that you get there. The museum itself, the architecture of the interior of the museum is also just very pretty for architectural work. No tripods, but you raise your ISO and hold nice and tight. You can get really lovely shots there. At the corner of 7th and Pennsylvania, 7th and Pennsylvania Northwest, just a few blocks up from the Capitol, is the United States Navy Memorial. And it celebrates the exploits of the United States Navy throughout its history. There's a statue called the Lone Sailor statue there. And then there's a whole series of bas-reliefs, metal bas-reliefs carved along the walls. And if you get in nice and tight with your camera on one of these bas-reliefs, which are very small really, but you can get in nice and tight. It almost looks like a black and white photograph. This is the landing of the astronauts in the water when they were picked up by a Navy destroyer, aircraft carrier. And that's one of the bas-relief statues. And again, just getting in nice and tight almost makes it look like real people. The National Gallery of Art houses priceless collections of all the major master painters going back many centuries. This is a Renoir. You can steal all this from the museum. You go in there, no tripods allowed, but you can photograph all the works of art, except when there's a sign on the gallery that says no photography. And that usually only occurs in exhibits that are on loan from the Louvre or from the Metropolitan or some other museum. They don't allow photography in loaned exhibits, but they do in all the permanent collections. And this is one of the famous Renoirs that are there. So I have a $7 million Renoir right in my living room that I stole out of the National Gallery of Art. Here's a Vermeer. And when you put this on canvas, you put this on canvas and put it in your home, it looks like you got the real thing. Signed by the artist. These are the famous pyramids, glass pyramids designed by the architect, Chinese-American architect named I.M. Pei, I.M. Pei. They were erected in 1976 here at the National Gallery of Art. And then if you've been to the Louvre in Paris, you know that he did the same thing there at the Louvre. The pyramids are much bigger, but we got ours first before the Louvre did. So this is the architectural design in front of the East Building of the National Gallery. That's called the East Building of the National Gallery of Art. Inside the East Building, the architecture itself just makes great photography. This is looking down one of the stairwells. It makes a sort of nice abstract architectural photo. Another wonderful statue down near the Vietnam Wall is called the Vietnam Women's Memorial. There were only 8 women who died in combat whose names are on the wall. All the other 58,000 names are men. And so the women who served in Vietnam felt there should be some other tribute to the role played by women in the war, which is nurses, like you, Christine. And so this honors the nurses who served in Vietnam. A beautiful statue with one woman on the left looking up at the sky. She's got her hand on the shoulder of another nurse who is holding in her arms a dying soldier, dying of a chest wound. I'm sorry, that's not good. He's dying of a chest wound. She has her hand in his chest wound saying, "Don't die on me, buddy. The helicopter should be here any minute." And so this nurse here is looking up at the sky and saying, "Keep him alive. That chopper should be here any second." Some people say she's looking up at the sky and praying. So it really is, that's the nice thing about art. It lets you interpret it the way you want. I use that light up there to sort of convey the way light coming down from heaven, so to speak, or from the sky. And then this nurse here is holding his helmet and praying and hoping that he will survive. It's a very moving statue, really very pretty. And one of my favorite photographs was that of a soldier whose life was saved by a nurse in Vietnam. And he gingerly came up and touched one of the statues in gratitude for the fact that they had saved his life. A tight close-up of one of the soldiers at night at the Korean War Memorial. These statues were designed by a veteran of World War II named Frank Gaylord. He was the sculptor of these statues, and he knew what combat was like for the people at the bottom of the food chain, the poor guys who do the shooting, the guys who get shot. And so in combat, that's what you look like. You're scared of getting shot. Oh, I'm sorry. I did it again.
No problem. Don't close anything or turn off any sharing. Just bring up your photo viewer again, and I'll bring you back in.
Okay. Let me see where it is. Okay.
Okay, you're back in.
All right. And the next one. This is called the Old Post Office. Rehabbed as the Trump International Hotel, but they maintained the integrity of the building with that beautiful clock tower that you can still go up, by the way. The National Park Service runs that elevator that takes you up to the tower, and you can still get a nice view of Washington from the top of that tower. It's a very beautiful old building. It used to be called the Old Post Office on 12th in Pennsylvania. And of course, at the National Zoo, always the pandas. This is actually in Paris. It's at Luxembourg Gardens in Paris. We do a safari in Washington called Paris on the Potomac, in which we take you to those places in Washington that have their counterparts in Paris, because a lot of things that we have here were copied from Paris. So this is Luxembourg Gardens, and this is the National Sculpture Garden in Washington, right opposite the National Archives and back there at 8th and Constitution. It has these beautifully spouting fountains like that go up and down. And so that's our answer to Luxembourg Gardens, which frankly is much prettier than the National Sculpture Garden, but still, we try, and that's our answer to that. Here is our answer to Rodin's famous statue called The Thinker. And this is in the National Sculpture Garden. It's called Thinker on a Rock. It's sort of a spoof on Rodin's The Thinker. This is the Pantheon building in Paris. And it was the building that was the inspiration for the US Capitol. It's called Palladian style architecture. And so we copied this same design when they came up with the design for the US Capitol.
It sounds like you may have a USB device that keeps kind of disconnecting.
There we go.
Okay, you're back.
Here we go. This is Notre Dame in Paris before the fire many years ago. And this was the inspiration for Washington National Cathedral. So in other words, our Paris on the Potomac takes you to those places in Washington that have their counterparts in Paris. So this is National Cathedral in the late afternoon golden hour sun. One of my favorite statues in Washington is called the Peace Monument. This depicts a woman who is the widow of a Union Navy sailor who died in the Civil War. And she is leaning on the shoulder of another widow of a Union Navy sailor. It's called America Crying on the Shoulder of History. And it is sort of a very moving statue anytime the country is at war, which seems to be most of the time in our recent history. But it's right in front of the Capitol, and you go there in the afternoon sun with the sun behind you in the west, shining on in the afternoon sun on the statue and on the Capitol. By the way, I'm sure that you know that when you do architecture, you do your west-facing buildings in the afternoon and your east-facing buildings in the morning, because buildings always look better with the sun on them. This is Roslyn. It's a little fuzzy. This is Roslyn and the Arlington Memorial Bridge. And this is in the Reagan building, the Reagan International Trade Center. It looks like something's coming out of focus here. Also in the Reagan International Trade Center. Oh, I don't know what's happening. Things are going. Can you see that, John?
Yeah, they're all a little bit blurry.
Yeah, they look kind of blurred on.
Are they blurry on your screen?
Yes, blurred on my screen too. I don't know why.
Go ahead and close the. It looks like you may have a zoom. You may have them zoomed in.
No, not.
Go ahead and close your viewer. I'm going to bring you back up on screen, but go ahead and close your photo viewer and then bring that photo back up.
Okay.
Don't stop the share.
Huh.
Probably the best thing to do would be use the X button, the top right-hand corner window of your photo viewer, and then go back to that directory you had of all your photos, and then double-click on that last image.
Okay, I think this is it.
And when you get back to that image that you were on, let me know, and I'll bring you back up.
Okay. Well, let me give you. Can you see it now?
Yes. Want me to bring it up now?
Okay. Yeah. This is a shot from another very lovely location in Washington, which is the DoubleTree Hilton Sky Dome.
David,
restaurant.
before we go too much more, can you hit that arrow on the bottom right-hand corner, bring us back full screen?
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, DoubleTree Hilton Sky Dome restaurant, about 14 stories high, in Arlington, Virginia, Crystal City, and it looks straight north at the city. And we do some full moon photo safaris from up there. And that's the kind of shot that you get. Full moon coming over the city. Like that. That's what it looks like. The windows are tilted down so that you don't get light reflected in the windows, and we turn off all the lights inside. And this is the kind of view that you get from there as well. And you get the streaking lines made by the cars going in and out on Route 395. I'm in the wrong program here, John. Let's see. Can you see these?
Yes.
It's not flashing through. I'm just going to get back to where I was.
I think that was the window you had a problem with the out of focus.
Yeah. Let's see.
If you need me to, I can pull up your pictures from Flickr.
Okay.
I have it ready to go if you need me to.
Okay, just a minute. Let me get to- In the meantime, as I go through, are there any other questions that have come up as I scroll through to get back to where it was?
No more questions. Cheryl says that made a comment about the statue of the people raising the flag, that it was a very muscular statue and very moving.
Yes.
And then she also said that she's been getting quite a bit of new sites to go explore in DC. And she's done a couple of the workshops with you, and both of the ones she did were excellent. And she says,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, that statue is there it is again. It is a great place to go. You can just spend an hour or two just doing, each of the faces of each of the guys in the statue, and the whole story there was so interesting because the photographer Joe Rosenthal was just a regular AP photographer whose job it was to photograph soldiers and send the pictures back to hometown newspapers. That's how AP makes its money. They get the money from the hometown newspapers of the GIs doing stuff in the war, shooting or raising flags or standing or conquering towns or whatever they were doing. And so he's walking up Mount Suribachi behind a group of Marines after they have already taken the hill, the mountain, and they had planted a smaller flag at the top to indicate that they had taken the mountain. But apparently the admiral on the ship in the bay wanted a bigger flag put up. So he sent another detachment of 6 Marines up Mount Suribachi with a bigger flag. And as they passed Joe Rosenthal, he said, where are you guys going? He said, well, we're going to put up a bigger flag. He said, but there's one up there already. He said, yeah, but the admiral wants a bigger flag, so we're going to put that one up. So he went up and photographed the guys who were up there with the old flag in sort of a regular grab and go standing position, and sent that back to the newspapers of those guys. And then as they took the old flag down, the fellows with the new flag came and found a big metal pipe and attached the flag to it. And as he whipped around, he saw them beginning to raise that flag, and he caught them in mid stroke, just as they were planting that thing into the ground, not all the way up or not all the way back, but halfway up. So it made just a lovely, perfect composition with the flag at right angles to the legs and arms of all the soldiers. So it made a very beautiful artistic composition. And he snapped it at 400th of a second with his news camera, I think a graphics camera. And apparently the negative before that one was ruined by a light leak, and the one after it was ruined by another light leak, but that particular negative survived, and it was taken down to the ship where the AP editor had a lab on the ship, and he looked at that as it formed in the there's that picture of National Report, and he said, "Oh, this is Gordon. This is a picture for all times," and he sent it out on the wire, and every newspaper editor in the country agreed with him and ran it at the top of the fold. Marines take Mount Suribachi, and it became the most famous photograph of World War II. You see this one?
It's up now.
Okay, so this is National Report, right? Reagan National Report.
David, can you click on where it says hide on the bottom next to stop sharing?
Okay.
Don't click
Hide.
stop sharing, just
Oh,
click hide. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. You got it.
Yeah, this is actually done with a cell phone, with a Galaxy, a Samsung Galaxy phone with a wide angle feature on it. And from the garage A, if you go to the A garage, and you go up to the top of A garage, you get a lovely view of the entire terminal, panoramic view of the entire terminal, which they have now added on the far left side. They've added on a whole new complex of terminals, so that you no longer have to go to gate 35A and take a bus to your plane. They will now have concourses that take you to the plane. This is a shot of with the camera held at a bit of an angle through some of the artwork at the airport and a Delta airplane tail in the back of it. Early morning at the reflecting pool, always a lovely place to go for photography. That sunrise on the National Mall is always very pretty, and so is the afternoon rain. This is what you get at sunrise, that lovely red sky behind the Washington Monument. A scene in Rock Creek Park, and this is on the Potomac in the early morning, where you get these skulls running up and down the river, coming by the Memorial Bridge. A tribute to the Seabees. This is right as you enter Arlington Cemetery. You'll see this tribute to the Seabees, that unit of the Navy, the engineers. They built the pontoon bridges and got all the tanks across the rivers all over Europe during the war. And that's the shot of in that sky dome, so it shows you the views that you get from there. And the famous Smithsonian Castle, just a lovely place. It used to be the original Smithsonian Museum. It's now the administrative headquarters of the Smithsonian Institution. And all these trees alongside are magnolia trees, and in the springtime, they are just beautiful. St. Matthew's Cathedral, we do safaris there from time to time. This is the church where the funeral was held for John F. Kennedy. He was Catholic. And it's a lovely cathedral on 17th and Rhode Island Avenue, just off Connecticut in D.C. That's part of the artwork at National Airport in the windows. And this is inside National Cathedral with a special lighting exhibit that they do in February each year. Unfortunately, not this year, but we hope it'll be again next year. They do a special lighting exhibit, and they let photographers in to photograph it. And you get displays like that. This is the effect you get of light spilling through the window and projected onto the walls of the cathedral. And this is part of the lighting exhibit also. And again, stained glass light projection onto the walls gives you an effect like that. So that really is a lot of fun to do, and the tripods are allowed in this situation. At a certain time of year, with the sun in the right position, the light comes through the stained glass window and lights up the George Washington statue. Here is the lighting display again. These are all artificial light, but they mimic the stained glass light. In late afternoon, as the sun is set, you get this view from the Capitol reflecting pool looking down the National Mall towards the Washington Monument and the castle. This is an Art Deco corridor at Terminal A, the original National Airport terminal, which is built in the 1930s, I think. All Art Deco style, and they usually have some art exhibits in there. This is in between, as you walk from the new Terminal B into Terminal A, you'll go through this corridor. This looks like it was done in the last century, but it really is quite recent. I just did it in sepia. It is a view of the castle, the Smithsonian Castle. Union Station. I don't know if too many people know what this is, but it happens to be the Titanic Memorial. It was done in 1936 as a tribute to the men of the Titanic. The inscription says, "To the men of the Titanic who gave up their lives so that the women and children could be saved." That's what it says on the back of the statue. And it has this fellow with his arms stretched out. And I did it with an orange filter to mimic Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie Titanic, because that's what he did standing on the prow of the ship. And we think that he did that mimicking the statue came before the movie. And as a matter of fact, if you zoom in on the face of the statue, he looks very much like Leonardo DiCaprio. It's very interesting because the statue was built long before he was even born. But it's a very interesting and very pretty statue. On the 12th of April at midnight every year, the Titanic Society of Washington, naturally there had to be one, which consists of the descendants of the people who died on the Titanic. They get dressed up in tuxedos and evening gowns, and they bring champagne, and they stand in front of the statue, and they toast the memory of their ancestors who died on the Titanic. This is the Ulysses Grant statue at the Capitol, looking down. There's some lovely cloud formations. Union Station, again, another lovely place to photograph. And inside the Capitol itself, no tripods allowed inside the Capitol. Stuff handheld. This is one of the newer buildings on the National Mall in Washington. It's called the United States Institute of Peace. The rooftops, as you can see, are curved, and they are mean to evoke the wings of a dove, which is the bird of peace. That's the symbolism of the curved rooftops. And if you stand out there in the late afternoon and you leave the shutter open, you get those nice streaking lights, headlights. It's a very pretty building. We were allowed to do a safari there a year ago. We hope we'll be able to do it again inside. Just a lovely place.
Quick question for you. Where is
Yes.
the Titanic statue at?
Okay, good question. It's at 4th and Water, southwest, on the southwest waterfront, right at the edge of Fort McNair, where the wall of Fort McNair, the Army fort, the end of that wall, that's where the Titanic statue is. It's also where the DC police boats and fire boats are stationed. 4th and Water southwest. The Supreme Court, afternoon sun, of course. You always want to do your buildings with the sun on them. And there again is the U.S. Institute of Peace. The Vietnam Memorial at sunrise. So this is another great thing to do. We do sunrise on the National Mall, and we start here. So this is what you get at, about half an hour before the sun comes up. It's just starting to come up in the reflection of the monument in the Vietnam Memorial that you get at a certain point along the wall. And there you have a lovely shot of the wall and the monument and the sunrise coming up. In the wintertime, that's the wall. Very stark contrast between the black wall and the white snow. The Mormon Temple, Latter-day Saints Mormon Temple out there in Kensington, they put 400,000 lights up all over the complex there, and you get some lovely shots at holiday time. It's free, open to the public. You come out there with your tripods, take all the pictures you want. It's a really lovely holiday display of lights. These are the cherry blossom trees in the fall, and a lot of people don't realize that cherry blossom trees in the fall look almost as nice as they do in the springtime. That's Constitution Gardens in the fall. In New England, but it's right here on the National Mall. That's Arlington Cemetery in the fall. That's the cherry blossoms, Tidal Basin in the fall. Hillwood Gardens at the Hillwood Museum in the fall. And so is that. Korean War Memorial in the fall. And this is we call the Wall and Fall. That's the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and so it is in the foreground. Is the fall colors. Cherry blossoms at sunrise. They convert that pond at the National Sculpture Garden into an ice skating rink in the wintertime. And there it is at 7th or 8th and Constitution Northwest, right across the street from the National Archives and back. The Korean War Memorial in the snow. Albert Einstein statue in the snow. He's right down at 21st and Constitution. And this is your reflecting pool in the snow. So we don't get that much snow in this town, but when we go, you go running out and take pictures, because the snow melts in about a day in this town. And the castle. And there's the White House. Unfortunately, that picture is not available at the moment. Everything's all fenced off now, but there's that fleur-de-lis design in the fence in front of the White House, and you can shoot through it and get a frame shot like that. They're putting up a newer fence. There are too many people had been climbing over the fence and running into the White House, so they're putting up a taller fence with sharper spikes so that will discourage you from trying to climb over it. There is a tulip, what's called the Tulip Library, right down next to between the Tidal Basin and the Washington Monument. And it's called Tulip Library because it has different types of tulips on display in the springtime, and you can just go there and enjoy them and get the Washington Monument and back. And there's National Cathedral again. And the White House from the top of the Washington Monument, shot with a telephoto lens. That's called the South Portico of the White House. And the other side, the Pennsylvania Avenue side, is called the North Portico. There's no back door, front door. They're both doors in which heads of state enter, so they don't want a back door, front door. It's called South Portico and North Portico. Wintertime in Washington, whenever we have it. This is the Women in Military Service Memorial. So this is a tribute to the women who served in the U.S. military. They have their own memorial at Arlington Cemetery. World War II Memorial at night is particularly beautiful at night, right on the National Mall on 17th Street, between Constitution and Independence. There's a little Photoshop here, but this about 5 years ago, they celebrated the 70th anniversary of VE Day by flying World War II era airplanes over the National Mall. And the Tuskegee is one of the Tuskegee Airmen planes. They flew them pretty low over the whole National Mall. Liberator bombers, B-17s, and the old Spitfires and Grumman Hellcats and all that. They flew them along the mall. It was quite a spectacular show. They were going to try to do it again this last year for the 75th anniversary, but too much cloudy weather, unfortunately, they couldn't do it. Einstein statue with a young scientist contemplating his future, looking at E equals MC squared. And the zoo puts on a zoo light display every year. And this is something that we did when nobody was looking. We went up the Washington Monument and painted our logo on it. There you go. So that's all I have. That's Washington. The purpose again was to show you places that you can come and do on your own. Spend a day or two or a weekend, or do a staycation and stay down here when things begin to open up again, especially starting in the springtime. It's such a lovely city. I've lived here for 50 years and never get tired of it. I grew up in New York City, but this is my adopted town. And I've really come to love it, especially as a place for photography.
David, I'm going to bring you back up full screen. Go ahead, Christine.
I have a few questions for you. Can you tell us about your available safaris in the DC area coming up?
Yes, Christine. We have a website called WashingtonPhotoSafari.com, WashingtonPhotoSafari.com. And on that website, we list all the different safaris that are coming up. For the time being, we're doing a combination of some outside ones along the tidal basin, along the National Mall, sunrise and moonrise things. And then several of our classes are now done on Zoom, where we'll have a special session on Nikon cameras, or a special session on multiple exposure, or a special session on f-stops and shutter speeds, different topics, and they're all done on Zoom. But we do anticipate things opening up. St. Matthew's Cathedral is going to let us in, for example, in March. We'll be able to do the inside of St. Matthew's Cathedral. And we'll be doing something. We don't know about the cherry blossoms yet. But I think probably towards the summertime that things will probably open up again for some of our indoor safaris. And the outdoor ones are always available. We do require masks, of course, and social distancing and all of these, but still, it's still a great place to come and take pictures.
Have you found more people booking trips, wanting to get out of the house now that spring is right around the corner?
Yes, yeah, that does seem to be the sort of pent-up desire to get out, especially with a camera. It's such fun when you come back. I think that what makes people attracted to photography, it's a great hobby, because it makes you proud of yourself when you get a nice picture that you've done yourself. You push the button and you get a picture, and maybe it didn't come out, so you do another one until finally you get a picture that you like, and you pat yourself on the back and you say, I did that. I'm not so bad after all. Look at that. Look what I did. So you've created a little work of art, and you stopped a moment in time, and it makes you happy, and sometimes it makes other people happy as well. So that's why I think it's such a great hobby. And for some people, like John and Christine, it's also become a profession. And it makes, and so it not only makes them happy, it also earns money.
Would people have issues going to shoot the cherry blossoms even if they cancel the festival?
Well, the thing is, if they can't, the festival is not canceled. The festival, they have the parade and they have dancers and things like that. So they go on with or without blossoms. They don't cancel the festival, but they might cancel. The mayor might not allow people to go down to the tidal basin. Last year, they roped off the entire tidal basin. You couldn't get there by car, bicycle, foot, helicopter. You couldn't get near the place because they just didn't want the huge crowds without the social distancing that you always get, people crowding around the tidal basin. So that may happen again this year. It just depends on the situation with COVID. I don't know. They haven't made a decision about that yet. It's pretty any time of year, but obviously the most pretty is going to be late March, early April for the cherry blossoms. I hope it'll be open.
Where can people find you online?
It's WashingtonPhotosafari.com. WashingtonPhotosafari.com.
Okay. The link is shared in our comments.
Oh,
and do you have a personal page where people could find you?
David Luria Photography .smugmug.com.
Okay.
That's some examples of the work that I do.
And are there any issues to be aware of with regards to the National Guard's presence in DC when going downtown, parking and photographing the area?
That's a good question, Christine. No. First of all, I think the Guards are going to be leaving on March 10th, from what I've read. They're going to stay through March 4th, which is apparently one of the QAnon conspiracy things about a mock inauguration is going to take place on March 4th. So they're getting prepared for that. But I believe they're planning to leave on March 10th. I don't know about the fencing, how long that's going to stay up. There is some controversy. Many of the lawmakers want the fences to come down, and the Capitol Police security people are concerned about what might happen if it does come down. So that's the argument going on now as to how much of that fencing is going to stay up and for how long. So that's the, but other than that, parking actually during the pandemic, it's much more available. There's less traffic, and they're not enforcing the parking regulations as much now as they do when it's not a pandemic. So, it's more available, and they don't enforce the parking. So, it's easier to get around by car.
Okay. We're putting out a last call for questions, and I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. It was a wonderful presentation, and
My pleasure.
I believe that's everything we have. I want everyone to join us next week for our discussion on our photo assignment for translucent and transparent. And if your photos didn't get into me, please message me and I will try to add them. If not, and you don't want them added to the Facebook voting session, then just get them to me by next Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Thank you again, David, for joining us. And
Thank you, Christine.
we will see everyone again next week.
Thank you so much.